All right, guys, so we are going to be finishing up 12.5 today. We are on problem 3, and we're going to start constructing different shapes now using the methods of construction that we have. So, right now we're going to be constructing an equilateral triangle with the length of a given side. So, what is going to happen is I'm going to give you the length of one side of an equilateral triangle, and then you're going to have to use everything that you know in order to construct that equilateral triangle. It's actually not very hard, and it's kind of fun. So, what is one thing that we know about an equilateral triangle? All sides are equal, so will you write that somewhere? Equilateral triangle means all sides are the same length. Okay, so what we're going to do is I will give you a starter line, and I will give you the length of one side of the equilateral triangle, and then we're going to use our compass and our straight edges to construct an equilateral triangle with this side length. So here are the steps to that. Number 2 says write a paragraph. I prefer steps, so here are the steps, and I want you guys to write them down so we don't forget. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our compass and straight edge to duplicate the line segment, which should be easy. That's like the first thing that we learned. Then, after we have the line segment duplicated on a starter line, we are going to use each endpoint as the center of a circle with radius equal to the line segment. So we're not going to change the width of our compass at all, and we're going to create a circle using each endpoint on the segment. So we'll make 2 circles. Now those 2 circles will intersect at some point, so then we will connect all of the endpoints, and that will give us a triangle. Okay, so I give you the starter line, and we're going to use an equilateral triangle with the side length that's given up here. So the first thing we're going to do is open our compass to that length, because we want to duplicate this segment. So on the given starter line, where am I going to start? At any point, it doesn't really matter where. So let's put a point. What do you guys want to call it? A. Okay. Okay, so I have my compass that is already open to the same length as the segment. So to copy the segment, remember we just put our compass on the point and we draw an arc that intersects the line. And let's call that B. So do you guys agree that segment AB is the same as the given segment? Yes. Yes. Okay, good. So then our next thing, we're not going to change the opening of the compass at all, and we're going to use each endpoint as the center of a circle. So don't change the opening of the compass, and you're going to use each endpoint as the opening of a circle. Okay, so I'm going to use B first, and that is going to look something like this. Make sure you make the full circle, guys. That's super important. Okay, if my compass would work, I should be able to make a full circle. Okay. And then you're going to do the same thing, but using the other endpoint as your center. So we're going to make 2 circles. Okay, so if you guys notice, is everybody good? Okay, if you guys notice, my 2 circles intersect right here. Put a point on that intersection and call it C. Does anybody see a triangle? Yeah, so you're going to take your straight edge, you can use the side of your binder, a piece of paper, it doesn't really matter, and you're going to connect all of those endpoints. Make sure that you connect them all so you can actually see the triangle. So basically what we did is by using the circles with the same radius, we duplicated that line segment 3 times, but we did it in a way so that they would all connect and make a triangle. So all 3 sides are equal. Okay, so now that we know how to do an equilateral triangle, let's look at how to construct an isosceles triangle. And our little friend here with the trendy white shorts is reminding us that an isosceles triangle is a triangle that has at least two sides of equal length. And then what else do we know about an isosceles triangle? Does anybody else remember? Not necessarily right angle, but we have two sides that are equal length, and so the two angles on the base are also equal. Okay, so that's an isosceles triangle. So the two sides have equal length, and the two angles are equal. The base is not necessarily the same length. Okay, so what you are going to be given is you will be given the length of one side of an isosceles triangle, and then, or one side of the triangle, and then you're going to need to construct an isosceles triangle using just this side. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to use this side as your base, and then construct a perpendicular bisector so that then we can make two other sides of equal length. So the side that's given is always going to be your base. So we're only going to have to duplicate it once. So here are the steps. You are going to duplicate the line segment. Then you are going to construct a perpendicular bisector. So we're going to do a perpendicular line that cuts the line segment right in half. And then we're going to connect the endpoints of the segment to any point on the bisector. Okay, so let's actually do this. So what we are going to do is along my starter line, we are going to duplicate the segment. So let's put a point down. Doesn't matter where. And let's duplicate the segment. So open up your compass to the length of the segment that's given, and then duplicate that on the starter line. So now we have a copy of the segment. And then what we are going to do is we are going to construct a perpendicular bisector. Do you guys remember how to do a perpendicular bisector? Mm-hmm. Okay, what would be the first step? Make it bigger. And then what? Then you make a little arc on top. An arc on top. And an arc on bottom. It just has to be bigger than half though, right? Half of the base, the segment. Can it be more than that? It can, yeah, it can. It just, if you open it up really big, you might go off of the thing. So it doesn't have to be super huge, but make sure that it stays the same. I just made mine. There we go. And then we do the same thing using the other endpoint. And where they intersect. You have to do one on top and one on bottom so that we can construct the segment. There you go. So you keep your compass the same opening, and you construct an arc above and below, and then you use the other endpoint to construct an arc above and below with the same opening as you did the first time, and that will give you two intersection points so you can create your segment. Okay, so we have our segment that's a perpendicular bisector. That means that we actually cut our segment that we made into into half. So each one of these halves is the same length. Now an isosceles triangle means that just the two sides are the same length. So we can pick any point along this bisector, and the distance from that point will be the same to each of the endpoints. So you can pick your intersection point right here if you want. You can pick down below if you want. You can pick really high above. It doesn't matter at all. So I'm going to pick something a little bit lower. So let's go down here. If you want to make your isosceles triangle really tall and skinny, you can do that too. But that's our isosceles triangle. Because these two sides, this one and this one, are the same length. All the problem wanted was for one side to be this length. So we're just going to make it our base. Okay? If you wanted to put your point all the way up here at the top and make it a really tall and skinny isosceles triangle, you can do that as well. Okay, so problem 5, we're going to move away from triangles and we're going to look at squares and rectangles. So what we're going to be doing is I will be giving you a perimeter, and then I want you to draw a square with this given perimeter. So really, really quickly, guys, what is the definition of perimeter? The distance around all of the sides. And how many sides does the square have? 4, and they have to also be equal. So any ideas of what we could do? Yeah, if we do a bisector down the middle, that's going to give us 2 equal sides, but we need how many? So what else would we do? Do it again. So we're going to make 4 sides, cut this entire perimeter into 4, and then we're going to construct or duplicate that smaller line segment all the way around. So here are your steps. The first thing we have to do is duplicate the given perimeter. So we're going to have to get a starter line and duplicate the perimeter. Then we're going to construct perpendicular bisectors to create 4 equal line segments. So it's just like Jack and he lost his key. We're going to have to bisect the whole thing, and then we're going to have to bisect the bisector in order to get 4. Then we're going to duplicate one of the 4 segments along 2 of the bisectors. So along 2 of our bisectors, we're going to duplicate that smaller segment, and that's going to give us 4 sides. So we can connect all the endpoints to make a square. Okay, so they did not give us a starter line for this one, so draw a starter line. I would probably put it somewhere around halfway down the page because we are going to be constructing some bisectors, which can take up a lot of room. So draw yourself a starter line. Since it's a line, make sure you put arrows at the ends. And then in order to duplicate the segment, we're going to have to put a starting point somewhere. So put a starting point somewhere, and then let's duplicate the perimeter. So open up your compass as wide as the entire perimeter. And duplicate that one. Okay, so then the next step is to construct perpendicular bisectors to cut the whole thing into 4 spaces. So before we can do that, we have to cut this one into half. So I would make your compass a little bit smaller, just so it's not so huge, but it still has to be greater than half, and construct a perpendicular bisector to that segment. So we're going to do an arc above, an arc below, and then do the same thing using the other endpoint above and below. So there's your first bisector. We're going to need that endpoint. You're going to need that endpoint, so put a point at the intersection. So now we have cut our perimeter into 2 equal lengths, but a square has 4 equal sides. So now we're going to take this half, and we're going to bisect it again so that we can have the length of one side. So let's make our compass bigger than half and construct a bisector of half. So there's one. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other half. So I'm going to leave my compass the same length because they're the same size. So what we have done, guys, is we have constructed now 4 segments of equal length. Does everybody agree? That this segment is the same length as this segment, which is the same length as this segment, which is the same length as this one. Yes? Okay, so the last thing we need to do then is we need to actually put all of these together so that we can make a square. I noticed that this base already has 2 sides. We just need to construct a point on those sides so that they are all the same length. So the last thing you're going to do is we're going to open our compass to the same length as the actual side that we want to use. And then we're going to duplicate that segment along these 2 lines, or bisectors, in order to make our square. So I'm going to duplicate the segment here, and I'm going to duplicate it here. This is just a coincidence that it goes through that point I already had. It's not always going to be that way. So now you can connect, using your straight edge, all of the endpoints, and you have a square. And there's your square. Okay, problem 6, very last one. We are going to construct a rectangle using a given perimeter. So it's the same idea. I'm going to give you the entire perimeter. Now we want to construct a rectangle, which means we're going to need to break up that perimeter into 4 lengths. However, are all sides of a rectangle equal? No. So the only thing that's going to be different about a rectangle than a square is that we don't want to bisect this segment so that we have 4 equal lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the perimeter, and then we're going to put an endpoint anywhere except the middle. So we want to try and make it obvious that the point is not in the middle. So we're going to have 2 segments of different lengths. We are going to construct a bisector through each of those 2 segments because while rectangles don't have 4 equal sides, they do have 2 sets of equal sides. So we're going to bisect the 2 different segments. And then we're going to pick either the shorter one or the longer one as our base. And we're going to duplicate the other segment, the one with a different length, along 2 of the bisectors and then connect the endpoints. So instead of constructing 3 bisectors, we're only going to construct 2 bisectors in this case. Okay, so let's construct our starter line and do it about halfway down the page again because we're going to do some bisectors. So there's my starter line. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is to duplicate the perimeter. So put a point anywhere on the starter line and duplicate that perimeter right now. So you're going to open up your compass to the length of the perimeter. And then we're going to duplicate it down here. So put the point on the point you made. Make an arc. And that's your perimeter. Okay, that should be easy, right? Okay. So after you have done that, you are going to place a point anywhere except in the middle of that segment. So try and make it obvious that it's not in the middle of the segment. I'm going to do something like this. So you are going to put a point anywhere except the middle of that segment. And the reason being is because we do not want all 4 sides equal. We want 2 sides equal and 2 sides equal. So if we put it in the middle, then we would get 4 equal sides. Okay, is everybody with me so far? Everybody good? Okay, so the next step then would be to draw perpendicular bisectors through each segment. So I have this smaller segment and this bigger one, and we're going to bisect both of those. Okay, so I'm going to bisect my smaller one first. So I need to open my compass, not to each endpoint, but a little bit over halfway. And then I'm going to construct a bisector. So you're going to do an arc above and an arc below. And then using the same opening, use your other endpoint to do an arc above and an arc below. Okay, so we just bisected the smaller segment. Okay, so what we just did was we took our smaller side and then we bisected it. So we created two equal side lengths, which is what a rectangle has. It has two sides that are equal and two other sides that are equal. So we just did the first two. So now we're going to look at our larger segment, so this guy to this guy, and we're going to need to cut that one into two equal lengths. So we're going to bisect this one. So open up your compass to more than halfway of the larger segment. And do an arc above and below. And then using the same opening, same thing with your other endpoint. So an arc above and an arc below. And then bisect that one. So let's look at what we have now. Now I have four segments. Do you guys see them? I have two smaller ones that are equal here, and then I have two equal larger segments. All four of those segments are going to make up our rectangle. The only thing we have to worry about then is which one do we want to be our base. So do you guys want our rectangle to have a narrow base and be really tall, or do you want our rectangle to have a wide base and be short? Wide and short? Okay, I heard wide and short first, so that's what we're going with. So that means that this is going to be my base right here, and I'm going to duplicate the smaller segments along this bisector, and we're going to draw a line through here, so that we can make our rectangle, okay? Okay, so let's duplicate this smaller line segment. So make your compass the width of the segment, and we decide we're going to make a short and fat one. So we are going to duplicate that segment along this bisector. So duplicate that segment. So far I have a base, and I have a length or a height, and then we just need to get our base and our height to go this way so that we can duplicate that. So we need to use our construction tools in order to do that. So let's draw another line. Okay, so now we need to construct this smaller segment over here, but there's no perpendicular line to construct it against. So what we're going to do is open your compass so that it's the length of that smaller segment. Okay, so everybody should be here. And move it over to your other endpoint and just draw an arc right there. Okay. So draw an arc right there. So we took the length of our small segment, which is our height, and we used the other endpoint to draw an arc. Now the problem is that I don't know which point on the arc is going to give me a straight perpendicular line. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that we just did, but now with the longer segment that's our base. So open your compass to the length of the base, and then move it up to the other end point and draw an arc there. And where the two lines intersect, or the two arcs intersect, is going to be your last line. So then you can construct your rectangle. And that's your rectangle. Okay, triangles are a little easier, the rectangles are a little bit more challenging, but there you go. Okay, and now you are totally done with all of your constructions.